Mike Bennett, could the Miracle be returning to Impact Wrestling in the near future? Of course, Mike Bennett was one of those names, along with a huge list of names, that was released by WWE back in April after WrestleMania. The interesting thing at the time was that Mike Bennett and his wife Maria Kanellis, he was gone as he went under Mike Kanellis in the WWE. But the interesting thing at the time was that they both had just signed WWE new extensions to their WWE contracts, 5-year extensions actually. This was after a time in which 2019 there was all these rumors, and I believe even he himself, Mike Bennett, posted something on Twitter saying, I've asked for my release from my WWE contract. I no longer want to be, WWE superstar, etc., etc. Then they had that just god-awful angle on Raw, didn't they, over the 24/7 championship and Maria being pregnant at the time, and then saying that Mike Kanellis wasn't the father, and eventually it was going to be revealed that Mike Kanellis was the father, but it was weird. It was really, really weird. But at that time, there was rumors that they wanted a release, and then they signed new contracts, and people thought, okay, they're going to be with WWE for at least the next 5 years, obviously, in this weird baby storyline. Then they disappear off television after Maria obviously legitimately has to disappear off television to go give birth to the child. And then we didn't see any of Mike Kanellis pretty much after that. Maybe the odd appearance losing on Raw or main event, but we wouldn't even have that. And when they were still running WWE live events, he wasn't on the road at all. He was just sat at home. And it looked like that was going to be the case for the next 5 years. And he openly said that the reason he did that, the reason that he decided to stay with WWE and sign that 5-year contract extension, was because he's got 2 kids now at home and a wife to look after and kids to look after, young children. He did what was right for his family, maybe not the best for his career, but what was right for the security of his family. And then WWE go and fire him anyway after WrestleMania in April time, so he had his choice made up for him then, didn't he? But in terms of a return to Impact Wrestling, that's what we're going to talk about here. Mike Bennett, the Miracle, Mike Bennett with Maria, are they coming back to Impact Wrestling now? Mike and Maria were with Impact Wrestling from 2016 to 2017. It's been very open that the reason that he left Impact Wrestling was due to the departure of Billy Corgan. He was a big Billy Corgan guy. This is the period of time in which we had the whole Game of Thrones scenario going on behind the scenes with Impact Wrestling when it comes to the ownership of the company, when it comes to Billy Corgan, Dixie Carter, eventually Anthem coming in and purchasing the company. So once Billy Corgan left, Mike Bennett left as well with Maria. They were big, they're very close to him. And Billy Corgan was a big proponent of Mike Bennett in Impact Wrestling at the time. He thought he was a great character. He really enjoyed his work. He was partially responsible for bringing Mike into the company in the first place, but also was a big proponent of what you saw on screen from Mike and Maria. So once Billy Corgan left and he had the lawsuit, and that's something to discuss at a later time without a shadow of a doubt, Mike decided that, you know what, my guy's gone, I'm out of here, and the Miracle left, and he went back. Well, he went to the WWE not long after that. Maria Kanellis going back to the WWE, of course. At the time, in his run in Impact Wrestling, of course, Mike Bennett was a former X Division champion. He had feuds with the likes of EC3, Eddie Edwards, Cody Rhodes, and Brandy Rhodes when they were both in, right? I believe we had the Cody Rhodes. Was it the debut at Bound for Glory in 2016, 2017? Most likely 2016, excuse me. That Cody Rhodes made his debut there with Brandy Rhodes. They had the angle with Maria and Mike, and which we had a mixed tag team match between them both, which was a lot of fun. This was a period of time where Cody had just been released from WWE and was basically trying to tick off the list and go to every company that he could, and he was doing something that I don't think anyone has really done since, right? The whole appearing for multiple companies. He was doing shots for Ring of Honor, he was doing shots for New Japan, Impact Wrestling, obviously he would go on to do it for NWA too, so he was getting around there, and Mike Bennett was the person really to feud with Cody Rhodes during Cody's Impact Wrestling run, which is really interesting, and it shows how people viewed Mike Bennett in Impact Wrestling at the time, and probably still do. They considered him to be, a big star, someone they could depend on, someone that they thought could work really well with Cody and Brandy, and help that feud of what would have been, a big name coming into Impact Wrestling in Cody Rhodes at the time. So it shows the status that he has or had in the company at the time. Now, at Slammiversary, I think this is interesting. Obviously, as I mentioned there, Mike Bennett was previously a TNA X Division champion. And at Slammiversary, we have the X Division championship being defended. We have champion Willie Mack defending against Chris Bay. I think I'm still going to go with a prediction, and I'll do a full Slammiversary predictions video closer to the event. But my prediction for that match is that we're going to have a new X Division champion. I think Chris Bay wins that one. I don't know how Johnny Swinger will or will not get involved in that one, but I think Chris Bay will come out on top. I think he's just a phenomenal performer. He is really, really good, and he really matches that old school TNA X Division style. And I think the really good thing about the X Division back in the day, and I know some people, this divided opinion, it divided opinion by wrestling purists and people that got the product at the time. The whole thing with the X Division back in the day it wasn't about weight limits, it was no limits. It was basically, you had these high-flying cruiserweight style matches, but if that's how you worked and you were 300 pounds, it didn't matter. You could fit right into that X Division. It was all about the matches, it was all about the work rate, and the unique stuff. That's why Samoa Joe was such a great X Division champion, is because there wasn't a weight limit for him, but when he was having these matches with AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels, etc., they were just out of this world and beyond anything you could imagine, right? And does Willie Mack fit into that? Not completely. I think he's the type of X Division wrestler that maybe like a Doug Williams was. You know what I mean? Whereby it's a different style, but potentially it could work if there's no limits to the X Division. It's all about the person that's holding the title at the time. That defines what the X Division is for me, right? If you have an AJ Styles holding it, that division works an AJ Styles style. Right? If you have a Samoa Joe, then that division works a Samoa Joe style. If Willie Mack holds the title, that division works a Willie Mack style. I think that's the important thing when it comes to the X Division, is that it's very fluid. And it's all about the people involved in the match. It's not about putting parameters on it. It's about just saying, you know what, go out there, have the best match on the show, because that's what the X Division is known for. So if Chris Bay did, of course, come out of Slammiversary as the X Division champion, I think a great feud, or a really awesome feud, would be Mike Bennett against Chris Bay. Could you imagine that? Mike Bennett coming back to Impact Wrestling, looking to go for the championship, the only championship that he held in the company, that being the X Division championship. I think that feud against Chris Bay would be awesome. If you've seen Mike Bennett recently, in addition to all of the other ex-WWE superstars, he's hyping up this July 18th date, which again is, of course, as I mentioned in all the other videos, is the Slammiversary pay-per-view date. Obviously, some people are speculating that obviously it's the Slammiversary date, but also it's the date that the WWE non-compete clause expires. That's been disputed, whether it is the 18th or not. It could actually be the 15th. It could be the Wednesday, considering that all of these superstars were released on a Wednesday in April, Black Wednesday. So 90 days after that could fall on a Wednesday, but then again, it could just be the non-compete closes, or expires rather, on July 18th at Slammiversary. So again, he's been hyping that up. He's been doing his social media posts. He hasn't been teasing it as outright as maybe an EC3 or a Zack Ryder or Gallows and Anderson, and we haven't heard much about if he's going to land next, or what he's going to do next. But if you have seen the social media post that Mike Bennett has been doing recently, he looks to be in absolutely phenomenal shape. And I know I've said this about everyone, because we have heard about all of these ex-WWE guys that have been let go, right? You saw Luke Gallows looks to be in great shape. We saw Heath Slater. Even on social media, he was posting that he looked in great shape. But now when we saw him on Monday Night Raw this past week, he's in killer shape too. And Mike Bennett's no different, man. He looks in absolutely tremendous shape. This all comes on the back of his sobriety, right? When he came into WWE, he was dealing with quite a serious drug issue, quite a serious pain medication issue that he never actually went to rehab for. He just got sobriety on the road. He's spoken about this very, very openly. He's spoken about his addiction openly on social media, but he's opened up quite a lot about it recently, saying that he never went to rehab. He just got a lot of help on the road, and people looked out for him, and eventually he managed to kick the habit, and slowly got into the best shape of his career. Because when he first came into WWE, there were rumors about him having heat pretty much from the get-go. When he got into WWE, one, I suppose, from the boys and the girls in the back, because he skipped NXT. I'm not sure that's a massive deal today. One of the biggest things he had heat for, by all accounts, though, was the way that he looked. He came in to WWE, again, skipped NXT, had quite a lot of fanfare about him signing with the company, and it was known for a while that he was going to debut, I believe, was it at Money in the Bank? I think it might have been at Money in the Bank in 2017. And it was known for a while he was going to debut there. They'd given him quite a lot of notice that he was going to debut at Money in the Bank. And he showed up in not good shape at all. He didn't look particularly, jacked or what WWE thought they were getting, and that was due to the addictions that he was going through at the time, and immediately that got him heat, and I think his run with WWE was just flawed from then, and it was a nosedive from then. But since managing to maintain sobriety and turn his life around, he looks to be in great shape. He was getting in great shape whilst he was still with the company, but now some of those recent images that you've seen, just go and check him out on his Twitter account. He's absolutely stacked. So wherever he lands next, he's going to land there in very, very good shape. So as I mentioned, his non-compete clause expires at the same time as everyone else. He is one of many stars linked with Impact Wrestling right now, but he falls into the category with the likes of EC3, with the likes of Eric Young and Luke Gallows, that really does have a history with Impact Wrestling. As I mentioned, he's a former X Division champion. Whilst his run was a short one from 2016 to 2017, it was a really significant one for his career, in the sense that, for me, that's when I started hearing a lot more about Mike Bennett with Maria. Obviously, I was aware of him because of his Ring of Honor stuff and former IWGP Tag Team Champion with Matt Taven and all of that stuff. But once he was in Impact Wrestling, his debut was met with such fanfare, being called the Miracle and attacking people and having Maria as the mouthpiece. And Maria obviously is such a recognizable name and face in professional wrestling anyway when it comes from her previous WWE run. This was the first time that I'd really taken attention to, okay, let's see what this Mike Bennett can do. And even, as I said, even though his run was short, he made a massive, massive impact, pun intended. And obviously made such an impact that he got a WWE run out of it, right? So he's got a massive history with the company, and I think that's really important because when you look at people like EC3, when you look at people like Eric Young, Luke Gallows maybe not as much as an EC3 or an Eric Young, but when these guys have history with the company, and it's where they made their name, it's where they were booked well previously, it's where they know that the audience respects them and the company respects them, after such almost like a traumatic experience with the WWE, and after being let go in such a devastating fashion, they want to go somewhere where they know that they're respected, where they know that they're going to be booked favorably, and they know that they're going to have the best opportunity to prove what they can do. And this is the same with EC3 and Eric Young and now Mike Bennett. That Impact Wrestling is the place to do that for them right now, because that's where their history is, that's where their heart is, and that's where the company can be built around them. Some people, as always, have been speculating, will he go to Impact Wrestling? Will he go to AEW? Or, as I mentioned, he could go to NWA, he could go to the National Wrestling Alliance, which of course is owned by Billy Corgan. He has a very close relationship with Billy Corgan. As I mentioned, the reason he left Impact Wrestling was because of the departure, or partially at least due to the departure of Billy Corgan leaving. So he could go to the NWA. I don't know if that's completely likely. And the reason I say that is, look, if NWA was doing regular episodes of Power right now, even if it was just in an empty studio there in Atlanta, or at the very least they were uploading content onto their YouTube channel, I would say it was a possibility. But that just isn't happening at all at the moment when it comes to NWA. Obviously, we haven't had any episodes of NWA Power for quite a long time now, due to the pandemic, and I don't know if there were plans to get that up and going again, even in an empty studio there in Atlanta. But then prior to that, they said, okay, well, we're not doing episodes of NWA Power, we'll start uploading content to YouTube. You had talk shows with the likes of Nick Aldis, Eli Drake. I believe we had something Carneyland and Inside the NWA with Joe Galley and Dave Marquez and all of that stuff. And then obviously with the speaking out allegations against Dave Lagana then denied the allegations, of course, but resigned from his position as the vice president of the NWA. We haven't seen any content being uploaded to NWA's YouTube channel since. That's been everything's been put on hiatus for the time being. So would Mike Kanellis go there, or Mike Bennett now go there, whilst they're not doing anything? And they're not uploading content to YouTube, they're not filming episodes of NWA Power? I think it's less and less likely. Look, this is a guy that wasn't working when he was at WWE. He was sat at home. He was getting paid, but he was getting sat at home to do nothing. He's had, 3 months now of sitting around doing nothing because he's not being able to because of the non-compete clause. I'd be stunned if he signed a company which would then do the exact same thing, pay him to sit there and do nothing. You would like to think that he wants to work, he wants to, work in the ring, do promos, work with superstars, have matches, and earn his money. So I don't think the NWA one is likely. Bear in mind also, we're seeing quite a few NWA stars get released or get out of their contracts right now. Obviously, Ricky Starks, people saying that his contract actually expired earlier this year, so that doesn't really fall into that category. But Zicky Dice is, or I don't know, I guess not now, the NWA television champion. But because of everything that's been going on, because they're not having shows and they're not uploading content, he asked out of his contract. NWA said that's fine. They have taken the stance that if you don't believe in the vision that we're going for, then there's no use having you on the roster. So quite a few people are getting out of their contracts, and it looks like Zicky Dice might not be the only one there. So again, I just don't see why Mike Bennett would go there. In terms of AEW, would he go to AEW? It's the same response that I've mentioned for all of these people, right? I've mentioned it when I came to EC3. I mentioned it about Heath Slater. I mentioned it about Gallows and Anderson. He could go to AEW, no doubt. Mike Bennett could go to AEW with Maria, and I'm sure they would do well. Maria would be a good addition to the women's division, even though she's not really much of a worker now. She's more of like a valet, a manager, something which is desperately missing in professional wrestling, to be honest. But if he goes there, I think he is in the same position where he is in WWE. Not to the extent where he's going to be sat at home not doing anything, but more to the extent of there's a ceiling there in AEW. I don't think, with the roster that they have, with a Jon Moxley, with a Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, Cody, etc., Mike Bennett just isn't going to get to the main event. He's got a ceiling there. He might have a TNT Championship Open Challenge match against Cody, which he'll lose. And then he might appear on the odd Dynamite. He might end up in something like the Dark Order or whatever. But then mostly he'll appear on AEW Dark, and that'll be about it. He would be a small fish still in a big pond. I think if he signs for Impact Wrestling, there is no ceiling for him there because he's got a history with the company. They respect him there. He's a big star in the world of Impact Wrestling. And it just, to me, it makes more sense from a career point of view to go to Impact Wrestling right now. Again, I mentioned this with Zack Ryder and a million other names I've done these videos about. If Mike Bennett goes to AEW, the very, very best that he can do is maybe become a TNT champion in the future, and that's a long, long, long way in the future. Whereas if he goes to Impact Wrestling, he can be whatever he wants. He can be the X Division champion again. He can be a TNA World Tag Team or Impact World Tag Team champion. But most importantly, he could potentially one day become the Impact World champion because that's just the environment which it is. He would be a big fish in a small pond. He wouldn't be a small fish in a big pond. And I think at this point in his career, you do have to consider those sort of things of where am I going to go next, where I'm going to be the most valued, and where am I going to go next where I'm going to be able to make the most impact, pun intended. And that at the moment is Impact Wrestling. It's not AEW, it's not the NWA. Of course he could go to New Japan, but again, what can he do there realistically? What could he do? And some people will say Ring of Honor too. But again, Ring of Honor, Bully Ray's contract has expired. Ring of Honor aren't handing out new contracts at the moment, unless it's exceptional circumstances. Now, obviously, he's got a history of Matt Taven. Could he go there? Maybe. I mean, if they made him a great offer, then maybe he could go back there. That's certainly, for me, more of a possibility than an AEW or a New Japan or NWA. It would likely be an Impact Wrestling or a Ring of Honor. I just think it'd be better for him to go for Ring of Honor for his singles, to Impact Wrestling, for his singles career. I think that's the best thing for him to do. And just the way that you looked at how he was booked in WWE, he was booked horribly. I mean, just absolutely horribly. I mentioned he had heat from the get-go, and it never worked. It never worked. Should he have gone to NXT? Probably. He'd have had much more fanfare coming to the main roster if he went to NXT, and I bet the whole time he was sitting at home, I bet he was thinking, you know what, I wish I went to NXT, because he would have got a chance. He would have got a chance in NXT, and he just never got a chance in WWE. And ultimately in WWE, that's what you need. You just need a chance, and if you don't get it, you can't succeed, right? And to be honest, again, this is the reason why he probably, I think, should go back to Impact Wrestling, is that he got so over in such a short period of time. along with Maria in Impact Wrestling, that WWE, when they snapped him up, said this guy doesn't need to go to NXT. He's ready for Raw or SmackDown, and then sent him to SmackDown straight away. So that shows the work that he did in Impact Wrestling. That shows how revered and how good his work was in the company at the time. So why wouldn't you go back to it, right? The logic is there to say, you know what, I did great here before. They've got footage of my greatest work. They can make me look like a big star. Any bad and negativity that I've got surrounding my career because of the WWE run, I can get rid of that pretty quickly by going back to Impact Wrestling, where I can be a star, where I can work, where I can cut promos, where I can face a talented roster of guys, which is only going to get better, right? It's only going to get better because we know that Impact Wrestling are signing a handful of the ex-WWE stars, but this isn't the case where it's old WWE guys coming in for a paycheck. This is WWE guys that are coming in because they've got a point to prove. They want to show what they can do. They want to tear the building down, blow the roof off, any metaphor that you'd like. And I think Mike Bennett would fit in perfectly there. So that whole initial jump of him skipping NXT and going straight to SmackDown, that doesn't happen without Impact Wrestling. And I think he would probably remember that, and that's important to the perception of his character going forward. Now, people obviously will speculate, is he going to be the fourth guy at Slammiversary? I don't think so. To me, it doesn't make the most logical sense, just considering some of the people we've spoken about in the last few days potentially being that person at Slammiversary. I think it's likely that the fourth guy at Slammiversary, as I mentioned, if I had to put my neck out on the line, I would suggest that it's going to be EC3, followed by Bully Ray. So I don't think Mike Bennett fits into that narrative just yet. I would prefer, like I said, for him to come in and initially be a star in the X Division. I would get him in, put the X Division title on him straight away, and build that division back up. I'm not saying it's bad in the current Impact world, but I think it can be improved upon. And you think about the history and what the X Division was to TNA back in its early days, and back in the days in which it was really, really popular. It got messed around and watered down when it comes to the Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan era of TNA, and it really does have the possibility to be built back up. And I think putting the title on a former champion like a Mike Bennett would be the perfect way to start. Okay, let's get this division going again, sort of thing. I think that Mike Bennett coming back in would just help elevate it to a next level, and really, come back to the company that made him a single star. Prior to coming into Impact Wrestling, he was known as a tag team guy, right? He was a tag team with Matt Taven in Ring of Honor, IWGP Tag Team Champions, but he was known as a tag team guy. When he came to Impact Wrestling, people would stop thinking of him as that tag team guy. They started thinking of him, okay, he's a singles guy, he's a single star, he can work. The package between him and Maria works great. She's a great valet, she's recognizable, she can cut a promo. It all worked. And to me, that's because of Impact Wrestling. Impact is where he showed that he can do well on his own, and he can stand out as a single star. So it just makes the most logical sense for me that he comes back to Impact Wrestling. And as I touched on previously, he's part of this group now that have a point to prove. All of these WWE superstars that got released in April, that are young, that are hungry, that want to work, they've got a point to prove now. Maria, she's got a point to prove. They've openly spoken about on social media, Mike Bennett and Maria, that they can't believe, well, they can believe because it happened, but WWE fired them just after they'd given birth to a newborn. And they've got a young child at home as well, and Mike had overcome his addiction process in WWE, and there's a very sour taste left in their mouth when it comes to that. So they have a point to prove. And I think Impact is doing the right thing right now in that they're hiring guys that have a point to prove. They're hungry. I mentioned before, this isn't the TNA back in the day that's hiring Booker T and hiring Kevin Nash and Scott Steiner and whoever. I mean, you can probably put Christian in there as well. I know Christian did great things in TNA, but he's openly said, he went there for 3 years to recharge his batteries, but he was always going to go back to WWE, and that was the case back then, right? TNA hired these big stars for these big contracts because it was still a payday. They worked less often. They could recharge their batteries, but some people were phoning it in. They didn't try as hard, and the goal was to go back to WWE in the end anyway. That's not Impact Wrestling now. when they hire these guys that used to work for WWE or other promotions, they're hiring them because they've got a point to prove, they're hungry, they believe in Impact Wrestling, they believe in the brand, and ultimately they believe in themselves. That's why they've signed with the company, because they have something to prove, and Impact Wrestling is giving them the opportunity to do that on a big stage. Or, obviously not a bigger stage as an AEW or a WWE or a New Japan, but a stage nevertheless. It's on Access TV. You don't have to worry about it not being on Access TV anytime soon because Anthem owns it all, right? So there's room to grow. There's room to grow, and that's why Impact Wrestling right now is becoming a talk again about promotion, because it's exciting. There's stuff going on, and there's buzz around the company for the first time in a long time. The roster, we know, is going to get better because of these ex-WWE stars that they're signing, but also you have to factor in maybe Impact Wrestling goes after some of these NWA guys that are going to be released or are getting out of their contract. Zicky Dice, I think, would be great. He'd be a great fit in Impact Wrestling. Ricky Starks, I'm really glad to see that he got the opportunity on AEW, and he had a great match against Cody for the TNT Championship a few weeks ago when he answered the Open Challenge. Do I think that's the best place for him right now? You know what? I don't think it is. Because I think Ricky Starks, if you're a Mike Bennett or you're an EC3, Heath Slater, whatever, if you look at Ricky Starks, that is probably going to be your trajectory if you go to AEW, right? You'll come in, you'll have a bit of fanfare, you'll have your match against Cody Rhodes, but have we seen Ricky Starks on Fyter Fest since or on Dynamite? No. We've seen him in the crowd, we've seen him on Dark. That's about it. And yeah, he made it to the company, and he's made it to one of the biggest stages, and he bet on himself, and that's great, but does he have a ceiling? Would it have benefited him more to go to an Impact Wrestling, maybe become the X Division champion, get some proper buzz about him, and then when he comes into AEW after that, use maybe Impact Wrestling as a springboard there, and when he comes into AEW after that, he's got more to his name than just being the NWA television champion as well. Again, that's just me, but I think that some of these ex-WWE stars should take a look at that if they're considering going to AEW, because AEW's roster is really stacked, and after getting released from WWE, you need to have rebound. You need to rebound and find the best place for you to thrive. And if that means you sitting in the audience again for AEW, is that really the best that you can do? So I think that's an important thing to consider. So I hope that Mike Bennett and Maria could be coming back to Impact Wrestling. Is it a given? No. I think that the competition between Impact and Ring of Honor will be something there, because I think Ring of Honor, despite their policy of not handing out contracts at the moment, would potentially be willing to make an exception for Mike Bennett due to his history with the company as well and his history with Matt Taven. So we'll have to wait and see. On that one. But of course, this is just one man's opinion. As always, what are your thoughts? Do you think we will see Mike Bennett and Maria return to Impact Wrestling in the near future? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll interact with all of your comments. I really enjoy talking to you all down there. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms on the screen right now. That's at Wrestle News 365 on Facebook and Instagram, and at 365 Wrestle on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak for you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.